Okay, welcome back. This is Chapter 2. And just like before, I'm going to go through with, my handy-dandy little lecture notes, and you're supposed to be following along, paying attention, and taking notes. It would actually make a heck of a lot of sense if you read the 4 questions I'm going to ask, right? Have that handy while you're watching the video, so when that thing occurs, you can go, aha, and write it down. If you wait to the end, you might have to go, oh man, let me rewind the video. So get the 4 questions for your journal kind of handy, print them out perhaps, have them handy, and then we'll start. Okay, so on page 54 of the book is this whole thing about the principles and learning objectives. This is kind of important, so let's just go through it. And one of the principles are, the information systems have to be implemented in such a way that everyone's going to work with them. You could get things messed up so bad that an organization essentially just won't use the tools that were provided. And because information systems are so important, businesses have to make sure that, these things are used appropriately to reduce costs and increase profit and all the rest of those things. And that information system workers, they're the ones who actually go through and do an awful lot of this stuff. That's important. The learning objectives. Define the term value chain. Yep, that'd be good. Identify and briefly describe the 4 change models. Yep. Describe the term competitive advantage. Discuss strategic planning for competitive advantage. Describe the 3 methods for assessing financial attractiveness. And describe the roles, functions, and careers that are available. That's essentially it. One of the parts of the book that I kind of sort of like is what I call the gold section, although it doesn't show up gold here, but that's not really the point. This section on why you should learn this, and you really need to go through that section of the book. I'm not going to read it for you, but essentially what it's all about is the human part of the place where business and computers touch is extraordinarily important. And so how your organization is put together, how susceptible you are to change. If you're in a stodgy old company where everyone wears suits and ties to work, you're probably going to be resistant to change. If you're in one of those companies where people walk in with blue jeans, tennis shoes, and wear roller skates down the hall, then making change you might be able to get away with some without too much fuss. So knowing your corporate environment is an important part of all this. So yes, you need to know a little bit about how all this stuff works. Okay, so on page 56 they finally start talking about like the value chain, and the value chain is really about things like, from a supply point of view, it's actually pretty easy to describe. I have raw materials and they're worth something, but not much. And then the raw materials get put into my holding pen. Well, now they're worth a little bit more to me because they're here. And then they get transferred into products. Now they're worth a heck of a lot more. And then they get transferred into cardboard boxes and getting ready to ship off to the retailer. Now they're worth a heck of a lot more. And so you gain value as things progress through the system. That's kind of how it all works. There are different ways of thinking about value chain. The upstream value chain is everything that happens up to manufacturing, assuming that you're a manufacturer. Dell computers, when they first came out, did some remarkable stuff in supply chain management, particularly the upstream stuff. One of the things they did was, instead of having a warehouse full of hard drives, what they would do is they would contact the vendor who produces hard drive and says, I'm going to be producing 54 computers this afternoon, and therefore you need to ship me 54 hard drives. And therefore they didn't have a warehouse full of hard drives. It came off the delivery truck and went directly onto the manufacturing line. Now that's pretty remarkable because I don't have to maintain a stock. I don't have to have a warehouse at all, because it just comes the just-in-time delivery of goods. Now you have to have a strong relationship with with the hard drive manufacturers, or CPU manufacturers and suppliers to be able to pull that off. But if you're a company like Dell, you could probably demand that that's the way it's going to happen. So supply chain management, yes, you can have some significant reductions in costs. Downstream is like from the customer's point of view. And so let's say, for example, in the example they give in the book is you're a restaurant. Oh, sure, the raw material part's kind of important. You know, you got chicken and you got rice and you got spices and all the rest of that stuff coming into your restaurant. But that's not really the important part. The important part is, you know, the presentation of the meal, the atmosphere, and, you know, table settings, and whether or not the customer is having a good time. Because if the customer's going to have a good time, they're going to come back, regardless of whether or not, you know, the chicken was all that good. So it's all about, you know, that customer interaction part. And so there's you know, customer relations management, CRM software out there that's all designed about making sure that wherever the customer touches your organization, it's a good experience. And so, you know, so that's an example of downstream. So sales staff has to deal with downstream value, and then the manufacturers have to deal with upstream. Okay, so that's kind of it in a heartbeat. Oh, on page 59, they kind of start to change the subject, and they start talking about the structures. So organizations can be structured in lots of different ways, and it's kind of important because I talked to you about earlier about, you know, your acceptance to change. It depends somewhat on your organizational structure. So the traditional organizational structure is the pyramid. I'm sure you've seen these before, where, you know, you have, you know, some corporate giant, and then you have the next level supervision and the next level supervision, and then you finally get to the worker bees. And this has worked great for millions of years. Okay, slight exaggeration, but it's worked good for thousands of years, and it's beginning to show its age. And mainly because the people down here at the bottom of the pyramid basically have very little decision-making authority. You know, let me ask my supervisor. I mean, they don't have any. An example I always give is, let's say you have two shopping center kind of a scenarios. Let's say you have like a Target and a Walmart, and you go to Walmart and the price is wrong on the product, and the poor person that's doing the checkout doesn't have the authority to override the price, so they have to, you know, page a manager, manager to aisle 4, and wait. And so you're sitting there waiting, and then the manager comes in and glances at it and says, okay. And they push the button, and then you go on about your transaction. Now, let's say you have another company like Target, where you walk up and you say, "Hey, the price is wrong," and they go, "Oh, okay," and they hit the button and move on. So, in one scenario, they have provided that bottom layer with some level of authority, and in some of the organizations, you know, it's just too deep, and they don't provide the worker bees with any level of authority. So don't take my example too seriously, because I don't want to piss off the people at Target and Walmart. But those two hypothetical companies that treat their decision-making slightly different. Okay. There could be what's called a stovepipe organization. So, for example, you're in the accounting department. And so the accounting department has, you know, a vice president and a chief operating officer, you know, and the manufacturing people have a vice president, and the you know, the sales people have and so what happens is all the division chiefs and branch chiefs can get together. All the people on this layer in the pyramid can get together and have a meeting, and the people at this layer of the organization can get together and have a meeting, because each one of these things are essentially sort of autonomous. Everyone has the same level of supervision, the same number of people it takes to get to the top of the pyramid. Kind of going on, you know, this is just an organizational chart, like a traditional organizational chart in a pyramid, where, you know, you have like a president, the company president, then you have a vice president for accounting, blah 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 blah. Same thing as another paragraph. Now, there are some scenarios where you try to flatten it. Instead of having a really tall, steep pyramid with lots and lots of layers of supervision, supervising takes a lot of money, and it's It takes too long. If this guy right here has a good idea, it's going to take a very long time for it to go all the way up to the top and get approved. A flatter organization basically means fewer people, fewer supervisors, and hopefully more autonomy, more decision-making authority. In fact, the only way you can flatten an organization is to also increase their decision-making authority, because one without the other would be a disaster. If you just took out the supervisors, but I still had to call the supervisors to ask Mother, may I? But now there's fewer of them, that would actually make things worse, okay? So whenever you flatten an organization, that's the part A. And part B is, you also have to go in and give them a more decision-making authority. Like my hypothetical scenario of a checkout trying to do a price override. Okay. So this is a goal. Most people try to do a flat organization if they can. There are certain organizations where they make no attempt whatsoever to flatten the organization, and for very legitimate reasons. Think about an army unit. You know, you have a division and your brigade and a company and all the little, it's very, very tight. And rarely do they come out and say, well, let's make the brigade go away and let's just have these battalions, and the reason is there's a military structure involved, and they want to be able to have, this command and control and all the rest of these things. And so they have no intention of trying to flatten their organization. They don't want to. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying they don't want to. Okay. There's kind of a weird scenario with an organization. It's called a matrix organization. And what a matrix organization basically means is it's just like that pyramid, except you have kind of multiple pyramids. Like you have a finance and accounting, but you have the finance and accounting for North America, and you have finance and accounting for Europe. And yes, you have manufacturing, but you have manufacturing for this. Now, I will tell you that this can sometimes go awry. And the reason is, let's say you have a manufacturing plant in Asia and a manufacturing plant in North America. And wouldn't it kind of be second nature to sort of like compare the two? To say, well, we produce, 1,200 widgets a day, and you only produce, 800 widgets a day. And so what happens is there's kind of some rivalry between the organizations by region, and unfortunately that can lead to some bad scenarios, as you can probably imagine. That let's say that somebody in North America figured out a really cool way to speed up the assembly line, but they're reluctant to share it with their other people, with other regions, because they're in competition with them, right? So it's not necessarily a good idea to have a matrix organization. The one reason why you might want to have a matrix organization is just because of the language barrier. So, people in the sales department in one organization probably will not be talking to the salespeople with another language, typically. So, that's kind of accepted. They have this thing called a project. And a project organization, instead of having just this structure that's based on sales and marketing and engineering, that kind of stuff, they have individual products. So a product manager, and the example I like to talk about is Samsung. Samsung makes lots of things. They make refrigerators, and they make phones. Okay, do you think maybe the the manufacturing people for making Samsung phones have anything to gain by talking to the people who manufacture refrigerators? I mean, there's nothing to be gained there. You think maybe the sales are going to be the same? Exactly the same? No. So sales, marketing, manufacturing, those are completely different. So it made sense to have, phone project manager and have him handle all that, and have, appliances project manager and have them handle all those things. So there's an awful lot of duplication, but it's okay because there's nothing to be gained by combining them together. Okay, this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark, and we'll pick this thing up again in just a few.